Hello everyone. Today we will be looking at the differences between two words that are often confused in the Spanish language, muy and mucho. Now these two words are generally used as adverbs, and if you don't know what an adverb is a word that describes the actions of a verb, an adjective, or another adverb, right? Now, describes the word describe means to provide more information about. So that's what adverbs do. They provide more information about the actions of a verb, an adjective, or another adverb, right? So we'll start with muy. Now, muy means very. And as you know in English, very is an adverb of degree, which means that it conveys the extent or the degree of something, right? So the first usage is that muy is used before adjectives as an intensifier. So as an intensifier, this means that it adds emphasis to that adjective, right? It adds a higher level of degree to that adjective, right? So ella es muy bonita. She is very beautiful. And you would also notice that muy is not affected by gender or number, right? Because we have over here, los coches son muy costosos. You see that muy here is used before a singular feminine adjective, and here it is used before a plural masculine adjective, right? So this shows us that muy is not affected by gender or number. Muy is just going to be muy. It does not change form, right? So ella es muy bonita. She is very beautiful. Los coches son muy costosos. The cars are very expensive. So very is intensifying those adjectives, right? So muy does not change form, and it is used before adjectives. So that's the first usage of muy, right? So the second usage of muy. Muy is also used before adverbs as an intensifier. So it performs the same function here with the adverbs. It intensifies that adverb, okay? So, hablo español muy bien. I speak Spanish very well. Yes, I would like to think so. So we have bien. Bien is an adverb, right? That's an adverb of manner, well, because that would describe how an action is performed. Susana siempre llega muy temprano. Susana always arrives very early, okay? So we have temprano here, which is an adverb of time because it answers the question of when, right? When does she arrive? Early. So muy just intensifies that adverb, okay? So when does Susan arrive? Muy temprano, very early, all right? So these two uses are very similar, right? But I should mention that muy is not used before comparatives. And if you do not know what a comparative is, a comparative would be either an adjective or an adverb that is used to compare two entities, right? So words such as taller, shorter, etc., you never use muy before those. Because I told you that muy is used before adjectives or adverbs, and a comparative can either be an adjective or an adverb. But you never use muy before those. So you would never say muy mejor, very better. No, you wouldn't say that. Or muy más alto, very taller. You wouldn't do that. So muy is never used before comparatives, and it is used before adjectives and when it is used before adjectives, in fact, period actually, it does not change form. It is just muy, right? And it's used before adjectives and adverbs. And it is used as an intensifier, which means that it adds emphasis or it adds a higher level of degree to either that adjective or either the adjective or the adverb that it describes, okay? All right, so this is muy. Now we will proceed to mucho. So we move on to mucho. And mucho has a variety of meanings, as you can see here. It can mean a lot of, many, much, or it can mean a lot. This means that mucho can be used as an adjective or an adverb. And the different meanings you see here will depend on the use, right? So we'll see how these different meanings manifest, right? So use number one, mucho is used as an adjective to mean a lot of, many, or much. And of course, many or much, the distinction between those two quantifiers will depend on the noun, right? So it will occur before nouns and it must agree with that noun in terms of gender and number. So this is very important. When mucho is being used as an adjective, not only will it go before the noun that it is describing, but it has to agree with that noun, but also it has to agree with that noun in terms of number and gender. So I have 4 examples here. So with this usage, mucho, they're going to be 4 variations, right? They're going to be 4 variations. So we have here, había mucha confusión. Now confusión is singular and feminine, therefore we use mucha, right? You could also say there was much confusion, right? So you know confusion is an uncountable noun, so we would use much if we prefer to use much instead of a lot of. We could use much. We wouldn't use many. So this is why I say that, especially as an adjective, the quantifier that you choose to use is going to depend on the noun, right? So había mucha confusión. There was a lot of confusion. Messi ganó muchos premios. Okay? So premios would be plural and masculine. Therefore, it takes muchos. Muchos, right? Messi won many awards, right? Same thing here. Hay muchas razones. There are many reasons. You can't say there are much reasons because much is used with uncountable nouns. So there are many reasons. I could also say there are a lot of reasons, right? And here, bebo mucho vino. I drank a lot of wine. So vino is singular and it's masculine, so it takes mucho. And we already did muchos. So when it comes to mucho being used as an adjective, there are going to be 4 varieties. Mucho, muchos, mucha, and muchas. And the quantifier or the correct form of mucho is going to depend on the noun in this case. So for example, let me give you another example with the weather. I'm sure you've heard this before. Hace mucho calor. Now, you may say, well, that translates to it is very hot. But we're not using muy. But do you know why we don't use muy there? Because calor is a noun. Okay, so we don't use muy with nouns. We use muy with adjectives or adverbs. So mucho has to be used there because calor is a noun. And you see that calor is singular and masculine, so it will be mucho, right? Even though the translation is it is very hot. Okay, so that's just another example of how when you use mucho as an adjective, it has to appear before that noun, and it has to agree with that noun in terms of gender and number, right? So let's go on to the second part. So mucho is used as an adverb to mean a lot or much. However, it has two uses. So as an adverb, mucho is going to be used in two contexts, right? One, to intensify a comparison. It will appear before comparatives. And as I mentioned earlier, comparatives would either be adjectives or adverbs that are used to compare two entities, right? So for example, él es mucho más alto que su padre. He is a lot taller than his father. So you see that the mucho appears before the comparative. In this case, the comparative would be más alto, right? Taller. Because you know in Spanish, to form the comparative, you use más plus the adjective or adverb. Because you know comparative would be, well, mostly adjectives, right? Mostly adjectives. Yeah. But yeah, adjectives or adverbs, yes, right. So más plus adjective or adverb. So he is a lot taller than his father, or he is much taller than his father. Él es mucho más alto que su padre, okay? Over here, ella es mucho menos inteligente que su hermano, right? She is not as intelligent as her brother. Now, we will translate this as saying she is less intelligent than her brother. I mean, that's a little too literal. So we will make it sound less awkward by saying she is not as intelligent as her brother. So you notice that in this comparison, this is to the higher degree and this one is lower, right? So, you know, when you're comparing two things, más means to a higher degree and menos would mean to a lower degree, okay? So, menos inteligente que su hermano, right? She is not as intelligent as her brother. Now pay attention here. You would notice that mucho does not change form. So whenever mucho is used as an adverb, it does not change form, right? So it does not have to agree with gender or number when it's used this way. So you would notice mucho is, L is obviously masculine and ella is feminine, but you see that mucho remains the same. No, it does not change. Mucho only changes when it is used as an adjective, okay? So mucho would appear before the comparative and it is used to intensify that comparison, right? Either to a higher degree, which would be más, mucho más, or to a lower degree, mucho menos, right? So here it will be, you would use mucho before the comparative, the comparative to a lower degree, which should be menos plus the adjective, right? Okay. So that's the first usage as an adverb. Now the second usage as an adverb would be to emphasize the extent to which an activity is performed. Mucho will appear after the verb. So in this case, mucho is going to appear after the verb, right? And is used to emphasize the extent. So this is going to be an adverb of degree, right? This is going to describe the extent to which the action or activity is carried out, right? So Marcos duerme mucho. Marcos sleeps a lot, right? So we see that mucho comes after the verb, right? So mucho is modifying duerme, and it tells us the extent to which he sleeps, right? So he sleeps a lot. That is like a quantity or degree. Marcos sleeps a lot. So when it's used like this, and once again, it does not change form, it does not have to agree with gender or number because it's modifying a verb and it goes after that verb, right? So Marcos sleeps a lot. Marcos duerme mucho. All right, so these are the three uses of mucho. It can be used as an adjective, and in this case, it will precede the noun that it describes, and it must agree with that noun in terms of gender and number. 2, it can be used as an adverb, and when it is used as an adverb, it can have 2 uses. It can either be used to intensify a comparison, and in this case, it will appear before the comparative, and it does not change form. 3, it can be used to intensify, it can be used as an adverb of degree to describe the extent to which an activity is performed, and when it's used this way, once again, it does not change form, and it appears after the verb. All right? So that would be mucho. Now it's time to see how much you were able to comprehend, because we are going to proceed to a quiz. Okay, so we move to the quiz. And you have to place the either muy or mucho in the spaces below, of course, based on the context, right? So let's begin. 1. Blank robos sucedieron. So the first thing we need to do is look at what follows, right? Robos. What is robos? Well, robos would be robberies, and that is a noun. Therefore, there's only one option. It has to be mucho, but it's a noun. So remember, when you use mucho with nouns, they have to agree. It has to agree with gender and number. Robos would be masculine and plural, so that means that the answer is muchos, right? So that would mean many robberies occurred. Yes. 2. Maradona juega fútbol bien. So bien is an adverb meaning well. That's an adverb of manner, and what is usually used to modify adverbs? Muy. Muy bien. Muy bien. So Maradona plays football very well. All right. 3. Usain Bolt es blank más rápido que los otros velocistas. Más rápido is a comparative. And what do we use before comparatives? Mucho. But does mucho change form? No. So it's mucho. So Usain, but I say Usain because it's an English name, but in Spanish it would be Usain Bolt, right? Usain Bolt is a lot faster than the other sprinters. That's right. And the other sprinters, velocistas. And 4, this is a question. Vives cerca de la iglesia. So let's look at what follows. Cerca de means close, close, or near. Right? So that's an adverb of place. So we use muy. We use muy. And that would translate as, do you live very close to the church? Right. Simple. This should have been pretty simple, I hope. Alright, so that brings us to the end. Muchas gracias por ver y hasta luego.